In the spirit of the new year, let's talk about personal development goals for 2024. Whether your goals are concrete or related to emotion, therapy can play a pivotal role. A therapist can help you create SMART goals: specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound. Not sure where to start? A therapist can guide you through stress management, anger management, and various challenges that you might be facing. Now, let me tell you about our sponsor, BetterHelp. They've made starting therapy easier and less intimidating. With over 30,000 therapists in their network, BetterHelp matches you based on your needs, preferences, and location, providing a wide range of expertise. To begin your journey, fill out a questionnaire about your challenges and therapist preferences. In most cases, BetterHelp matches you with a therapist within 48 hours. Plus, you can choose phone calls, messaging, or video chat, whatever feels most comfortable for you. Scheduling is a breeze, and if you ever feel your therapist isn't the right fit, switch with a click of a button at no additional cost. No need to break up with your therapist and start the search anew. Join over 4 million people who've used BetterHelp to start living a healthier, happier life. Click the link in the description or visit betterhelp.com/JMC. That's betterhelp.com/JMC. Clicking that link helps support this channel, and it also gets you 10% off your first month of BetterHelp, so you can connect with a therapist and see if it helps you. Remember, therapy is about your well-being, and BetterHelp is here to support you every step of the way. Thanks to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. Take care of yourself, and here's to a year of growth and positive change.
It's very interesting because, I am outspoken, obviously. I am well-spoken. I can say that about myself. Other people can't.
Okay, there you go.
But, I'm outspoken, well-spoken. I'm well-researched. As a friend of mine used to say, I have done the research. I've done it. And coming into this activist part did not feel like a natural step. People like, oh, it just did it. Nope, didn't feel natural. Felt very alienating. I got hate mail for how I handled the police. We'll talk about that. We're probably going to come on that. I got hate mail for how I led the protest. We got hate mail for all these different things, especially me. And it didn't feel natural. It always feels like an out-of-body experience.
Yeah. I'm trying to think back now. Yeah, it was Marquise. Actually, I heard you on the Melanin Report, and I hit up.
I'm still blaming Marquise. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if we actually met him or not.
Well, no, yeah, because I was digging the podcast, and I was like, who do you have on with you? Because the vibes and the banter were good and everything.
That's my boy. He's such a good dude.
Yeah.
And we met because I was always commenting on TCP in the morning, and then they came down to come on the Black NewsBeat. I was like, you guys gotta come down.
I remember that. Yeah.
And then we just rode up there one morning. I think we rode up there first one morning. Yeah, I think we just went up. We're like, we're going to TCP.
Okay.
And that was really cool because it was pandemic. Pandemic things were happening.
Yeah.
And they were doing it out of the media center, and it was just really cool to see them, literally just thriving in the middle of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So that was really cool.
When I got hip to, my wife got me hip to Marquise. They went to school together, graduated together. Mm-hmm. And when she brought him up and I looked up TCP, I remembered kind of coming across it. So it was just cool to meet him. And through him, I've been able to meet a lot of cool people, interesting people, including yourself. And so obviously, when he was like Dr. Kimeka Campbell, I think I was already following Black NewsBeat.
Oh, wow.
I just didn't so when I put two and two together, I was just like, oh, okay, yeah. So
that's really neat.
Well, let's start with Black NewsBeat.
Okay,
then,
all right.
because Wednesday night, I remember you telling me Wednesday night's show night. Because usually I do my episodes on Wednesday night.
Mm-hmm. It's a good night to do.
Yeah, it's halfway through the work week.
Yep.
I kind of, for me, it started like we'll just do it Wednesday nights, and then we just stuck with it. Mm-hmm. And it just works. But you go live,
yeah,
which is cool. And it's something like I've caught a few of your live episodes as I'm driving around. It pops on my phone.
Yeah.
So I know you're not supposed to drive when you're, but I do, right? Because I'm just like, I want to see what's going on. So talk to me about what inspired you to start Black NewsBeat.
Absolutely. So I always tell this story. Shout out to Chris Gibson, affectionately known as Gibby. Gibby, yes. Gibby was the he had like 5 jobs at Open Stage, but he was a artistic producing director. He built sets. He directed shows at Open Stage, which is a local professional theater in Harrisburg.
Okay.
And we were at a protest in 2020, probably May 2020. And Open Stage had provided the sound. And they had provided the speakers and mics and the podium. And we were on the Capitol steps.
Okay.
And I met Gibby and his wife, Rachel, who are to this day dear friends of mine. This was late May, early June 2020. If you remember, everything kind of broke loose that second to last day in May 30th. I attended a protest on the Capitol steps after George Floyd was murdered. We can say murdered now because people are like, don't say murdered. Murdered is remember that whole thing?
Yeah.
And the first protest was very impromptu. This next one that I was at, we had planned with a bunch of groups and different folks. And I was the MC. And it was chaos. This protest was chaos. This is probably the most unrest Harrisburg has seen in many years, maybe in a generation.
Okay, wow.
Especially as I've been doing a lot of social justice work in Harrisburg, listening to the stories of a lot of the people who've been there for a while, and from parents to grandparents and just people who have lived. There's one man who's lived in the city, single man, probably in his 70s, years and years. And anytime I see him in one of the cafes or the shops or the restaurants in the city, he'll tell me a different story.
Okay.
And so this was a crazy time, especially from the historical lens of a lot of folks in the city who had been there. And the protest right before ours, folks had gotten pepper sprayed by the police, and someone threw a brick through a cop's window, and it was really a lot. I think there were rubber bullets, all kinds of stuff.
Gotcha.
Thankfully, no one was harmed beyond that. But it was bananas. And at this rally, the next one that we were at, the police chief was there, and he knelt before the crowd, and I'll never forget that moment. They just lambasted him. They just screamed at him, and I don't like the police chief, but it was a really, really weird and tender and just fraught moment.
Okay.
And
so
I
he knelt in front of the.
Yes, I gotta find that picture for you. It was something to see. I've never felt anything like that, seen anything like. People were so angry, but they weren't just angry. They were you could tell it was this mourning sadness. Like people's screams were devolving into sobs, and all you could do, like at one point, you could tell people were like, you could tell the transition because, emotions sweep through crowds, right? And you could tell they went from being angry to like their throats catching because people just started to cry.
Yeah.
And they were angry at him because a 5-year-old child had gotten pepper sprayed, and they were angry at him because, the protest was peaceful. And they were angry at him because of years of other things. So much built up into that moment.
Sure.
And I'm telling you this story because right after that protest, Chris Gibson goes, I think you should start a TV show.
Wow.
First, I appeared on his show. He's like, I really think you should come on my show. He had a show called My Talented Friends Live.
Okay.
And at the time, Open Stage, I went to doing all virtual shows. So all their plays, they had one-man plays and other kinds of productions, small productions.
Okay.
And Gibby said, you should have a show. And I was like, that sounds crazy. What would I talk about? But first, appearing on his show, I did like a 5-minute segment. I talked about young professionals of color and the work that we were doing, and just like outlining some of the local news stories. Like I just did that and talked about, you know, in 2020, we started, even though there was so much unrest going on, we had started in 2019 seeing like a resurgence in Black businesses downtown, Black and brown businesses throughout the city. And we had already started like talking about that. We were calling it the Harrisburg Renaissance and all this stuff.
Yeah.
So, and then the pandemic came. And this was hard because so many Black businesses did not survive, had just started coming back,
Sure.
had just started blossoming,
Yeah.
didn't survive. And it's heartbreaking. So I did Gibby's show for a while doing that, just a 5-minute segment. And then so that was August. By October, November, he was like, listen, you're doing really serious work and I really feel like you could have a show. And I'm like, gosh, how? And so me being myself, I was like, well, you know, he's like, you know, let's put something together. So I'm going to research how to do a show. And I started looking up like how to create, you know, how do you create a show? What kind of show do I want? And trying to think through what kind of segments. And I had a team back then. Shout out to my husband, Basir Vincent, Cody Burt. And Cody Burt was our creative director. He's moved on to other things. And it was us three. That's how we started. It was us and Gibby. and Rachel.
Cool.
And Rachel did the graphics. Gibby was like the producer and helped us get it right and sound and everything. And we started on the stage, the very brand new Cabaret stage. It had during the pandemic. Open Station started building out a new lobby and bar. Beautiful space. And I started on the Cabaret stage, just me, Gibby, and Basir and Rachel. And we shot the first episode. It was just me, and we would bring guests on StreamYard, and that's how we started.
Okay, so it wasn't live in front of a studio audience?
No, not to start. And that was the time when we couldn't bring anybody in. A lot of
fair
businesses
enough.
were
Yeah, you're
shut
right.
down and
yeah.
everything like that. So that was February 2021, and things were still shut down. It was going on almost a year of the shutdown, which was bananas. By that time, people were going stir crazy because the shutdown was March the 16th in Pennsylvania, for the most part, in Harrisburg.
Yeah.
School, I remember I started my job March the 1st, and we got the notice on Friday the 14th that everything's going to be shut down. And that was that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, by 2021, we were still shut down. The theater hadn't come back. I had gotten COVID. Was that 2020? Yeah, I had gotten COVID in January 2020. Didn't even know I was going to start the show in 2021 because I had gotten I was vaxxed. I was boosted.
Gotcha, yeah.
Had just done the mayor's inauguration, and they had people were coming back, but the theater was smart because there was a outbreak at the mayor's inaugural ball.
Okay.
And I had gotten sick. Me and my husband got sick. And it was weird because I didn't know. There was so much going on. The police had ended up in our, and it was a whole thing with the police. We'll get into that if we have time. But
Okay.
so it was like a perfect storm of starting the show because one of my first episodes, I laid out how the police waste resources, and it was just the whole thing. But yeah, so that's how we started.
So the activism came. The reason why I'm bringing up activism because when you brought up the protests, and obviously the protests and COVID, the pandemic, coupled together was a crazy bananas experience. It was really crazy. And I don't know a lot about history, but I like to try to keep up enough. And I don't know if I've ever read or seen something like that. And obviously I wasn't around long enough to know history to that degree. But when I saw the protest nationwide and then globally, the response, I was like, wow, this is ridiculously bananas. And the attention. And I was like, this is happening during the most craziest time because the world shut down. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because when you're telling me that because of these protests, during these protests is when you were, Gibby brings up, hey, you should have your own show. Was the activist in you, is that what carried you through having a show, having that voice already? You said that you were the MC. Which the question that popped in my head is why Were you? Are you the go-to MC in that type of?
No.
No.
I wasn't at the time. Like I had done a couple things, but no, not really.
Okay,
It's so
wow.
funny because I remember stepping up to the podium that day and being like, "Yep, this feels right."
Okay.
And I had done a couple things. I've spoken in front of a lot of crowds. I come from my first real speaking experiences were in academia.
Okay.
Grad school,
Yeah.
being a lecturer and a adjunct professor. So those are my first real experiences with like speaking in front of big crowds, presenting at conferences.
Yeah.
So not leading rallies.
Yeah. Yeah.
None of that. Prior to 2020, it just wasn't that way.
God, wow.
But we really seized the moment, particularly as an organization. I run the Young Professionals of Color Greater Harrisburg
Okay.
with my husband and my friend Elise Irvis and our other co-founder Alicia Washington. Shout out to all the folks who passed the mantle on to us as well.
Gotcha.
And before that, we were growing the organization. We started in 2016, and we had just got to the area. We were looking for how to commune with other Black and brown professionals.
Okay.
We had heard that there were so many Black and brown people in the area. We're like, well, where are they?
Yeah.
We're looking for Black people. Where are the Black people? Aren't there Hispanics here? Like, so that's what we were busy doing. We were busy growing young professionals of color. And I will say we seized the moment when we started. When 2020 started exploding, that's the only word that I use it constantly to describe what happened. I feel like we were ready to receive. Our membership exploded. We adopted classrooms in the region. Our adopted classroom program exploded. Juneteenth, we do Juneteenth. Those things exploded. But no, I was not like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like I was doing things, couple things, I remember very clearly at the beginning of March going, what the heck is next for YPOC? What are we going to do?
Yeah.
I felt like I was at a turning point. We all felt very like nobody, we just felt like, are we doing enough for people to participate? Do people like us? Do they want us? Are we meeting anybody's needs? Our motto, our mission is to create community for the Black and brown professional collective. We actually changed our name from the Harrisburg Young Black Professionals to Young Professionals of Color because the city is 78% Black, Hispanic, and Black, BIPOC, basically, along with Asian and different various migrant populations. And so we just were like, what the heck's next?
Yeah.
And then things went crazy. Things went nuts. I remember sitting on the floor. I had just gotten 2 dogs March 1st. Didn't know we were going to shut down. I knew I wanted 2 dogs, but I'm sitting there on the floor with my friend. And I'm like, I don't know what's next for YPOC. I don't know what's going to happen. And then everything went completely bonkers.
Yeah.
We had to pivot real fast to, move to all virtual events. We were doing virtual board games and brunch, virtual happy hours, virtual Black and Berg. That's what we do for Black History Month. Virtual everything.
Yeah.
And we had more participation. People were looking for community. And that is the point where I feel like we were able to seize the day.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what ushered me into this activist thing, which is still like people like, if you read stories, if you look up any press about me, the first thing you see is Kimeka Campbell, activist. And I'm like, I mean, okay, now, but I've done other things, guys,
I appreciate that.
Yeah. It's very interesting because, I am outspoken, obviously. I, am well-spoken. I can say that about myself. Other people can't.
Okay. There you go.
But, I'm outspoken, well-spoken. I'm well-researched. As a friend of mine used to say, I have done the research. I've done it. And coming into this activist part did not feel like a natural step. People like, oh, it just did that. Nope, didn't feel natural. Felt very like alienating. I got hate mail for how I handled the police. We'll talk about that. We're probably going to come on that. I got hate mail for how I led the protest. We got hate mail for all these different things, especially me. And it didn't feel natural. It always feels like an out of body experience.
Yeah.
And weirdly enough, the show's the only place I really feel like at home.
Okay.
To talk about these hard things.
You talk about Black NewsBeat?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. That's where I feel at home to do certain things.
You feel that's your safe place to speak without the. I don't want to speak for you, but I'm assuming it's without the fear of the whatever the fuck I'm about to get from people.
Well, they still do it, but like they still every once in a while.
Forgive me, I curse. I should have prefaced that.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm sorry. Oh, can I curse? Cause I
yeah,
curse.
yeah. No,
they're like, so somebody was like, "Oh, you're like the most cursingest doctor." I'm like, "You have no idea." But oh my god, the shit ton of hate mail I've gotten since I started the show. When we had the police incident at Hurston Manor, when we've taken up certain causes, like we took up Bill 8, which was the creation of the Community Law Enforcement Advisory Committee under City Council, and how we advocated for that and got our amendments through and all this stuff. At all these points, just different kinds of hateration, Mm-hmm. And but the show has been the space where I can process.
Okay.
There was a point in that time I would wake up. I still wake up kind of anxious, but it used to be full on panic attacks almost every night. I would wake up in the middle of the night like, oh my God, something, for months on end, especially through 2020, especially after I got sick with COVID. And the show is how I've been able to process things. I use it as a processing tool. So instead of reading the news to absorb it into my spirit, because that's how it felt was happening, I would read it to talk about it in the community with other people. Yeah. And it's a different way of handling it.
Well, I'm sure the hate mail aside, the other types of responses, the feedback, the positive reinforcement that you're getting helps you. Because I kind of relate to that in what I'm doing here, where it's like when I'm engaging with people and the conversations help me process things where obviously you're getting other points of view, but it's also like you can articulate and speak what you're trying to say out loud to somebody, and they're hearing it and receiving it, as opposed to just being like, I'm by myself and I'm talking out loud. It's a different experience, and you can start processing things. Like, I can appreciate that because I've never really thought of that until you said that, and it does make sense that would be like your safe haven in a way where it's like this is my place, and I can speak my truth, the truth, and not feel any type of repercussion. So another reason why I brought that up, the timing of everything at that time, and this happens a lot on the podcast when people kind of come up and it's almost as if whatever they're doing in their life, there was a shift, there was a pivot at that time that kind of put them in this position to start doing this where they weren't planning on doing that
at all.
And I always feel guilty, when it comes to the pandemic and being like, because of that, things happen. It's like, it sucked because there was a lot of people that died because of that, and there was a lot of turmoil and frustration. And I never want to look at that like a keystone moment for people kind of like were able to find their path. But that really is how I feel it was for me anyway, where it kind of dawned on me when we were sitting at home for as long as we were, like, you know what, like, I'm spending a lot more time with my family. This is actually kind of dope. Like, what can we do to have more of this? It just sucked that was the reason
that
why.
was how it happened.
Right.
But everything happens for a reason, good or bad reasons. And you have to seize that moment as best as you can. And there were a lot of, I've also spent a lot of time acknowledging that there were people that just could not seize moments. 1 million people died in the country, plus 1 million plus people. Our city, my family members lost people. So many people went through being deathly ill. And so I'm not saying, everything happens for a reason in this way, like, this kind of like fake ass positivity way. Not like that.
Yeah, I hear you though.
But everything does happen for a reason. And there is a way that some of us I think we are charged with making the best out of it in honor of everyone who died, in honor of those who got so sick during this time, in honor of those who lost their lives to police brutality and were maimed or hurt, in honor of all these things that, I think it's our duty. And that's how I've been processing it, because I also feel incredibly guilty a lot.
I think that's what I was trying to get to.
Right?
Where, it's like survivor's guilt in a way.
It is. It's a lot of survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
And it's survivor's guilt, and it's also that guilt. So not only are we surviving, but it's the guilt that we have been put in a place of privilege, even though we are still experiencing very real types of discrimination or whatever in society. It's this weird place to be in.
Yeah.
And it is. And so it's hard to, I don't think there aren't, I want to say this very carefully because I don't have to say it carefully. I'm going to say what I'm going to say. But
go for it.
I think it's difficult for people to navigate that. And I don't think a lot of people understand, particularly folks of dominant culture. And when I say dominant culture, I do mean white presenting and white people. You cannot fathom what it's like to live at those intersections. I know I have privilege amongst my group, but I'm still experiencing soul-crushing discrimination and prejudice every single time I walk outside.
Right.
And it's just a weird place to be.
Well, it's also like, I said this in the interview that I just released. I interviewed Avita Colon and Solis White, and
I love them so much. Shout out to my booze.
Yeah, they were so dope to talk with, and the vibe was so dope. But one of the things I had said in that interview, though, as I was watching it back, was something along the lines of what you were just saying, where it was like, even though I'm in a position where I'm paraphrasing, forgive me, but I was saying something along the lines, even though I'm in this position where I'm getting what I prayed for, I still feel like I still have this duty, a responsibility to speak about things that aren't right, even though I'm not in that position like I once was, or I'm not as close to it, dealing with it as closely as somebody else would. I still have a responsibility, I feel. And because you do almost get that response from people where it's almost just like, but it's not like that for you anymore. When or when I was growing up, or when I saw my parents and my grandparents, and I'm like, yeah, but that doesn't mean that I have no right to speak about it. And it's that becomes like a whole different conversation, because you can kind of get sidetracked from what we really should be talking about and spend and waste energy trying to explain why you're. Instead of just focusing on the issue, let's waste a bunch of time, So yeah, I can appreciate that, and I'm glad that you said that. So Black NewsBeat now is rolling February 21. I believe you said that you had StreamYard, so you're doing it online, which everyone was doing virtual at that time.
Everyone, yeah.
So how was that then? Considering where you are now, because you are doing it in front of a studio audience now, because I'm hearing people clapping.
Yep.
Because that was one of the things I saw, and I was just like, "Damn, that's so dope!" Like you're doing it in front of a studio audience. So, talk to me about what you're doing on Black NewsBeat and the process to kind of grow it to where it is now. Because you don't want to stay stagnant with the show, but you're also keeping it. The information and that you're delivering is still the same. Like, talk to me about that growth process for you.
It's been a tough road. We've had 2 people in the studio.
Okay.
We've had 50. It really depends on the night. It depends on the time of day. The time of the year. It depends. And it depends on how well I market. Like, I've been in a slug the last couple of months, kind of just.
I dig it. Yeah.
Trying. There's no money. I don't get paid. People think, oh, she's got a show. She get paid. No, all the stuff comes out of my pocket. I pay my writers. I make sure my staff gets paid. We have staff.
Okay.
We have a whole thing going on. The theater is gracious to loan us staff, which is amazing. And it is just, growth is a sideways, winding up and down, back and forth road, right? Up the mountain, down the mountain, across the mountain. Sometimes you go back up and then you come back. It's just a weird process. And I think what has been interesting is we've made a couple intentional decisions that help.
Okay.
We are like, we're going to do the show at least twice a month. We usually end up doing it 3 or 4 times, just depending on, what's happening. Election season is big because we have, political hopefuls, elected officials on. We have a lot of community leaders. I love that part about it. And then the other decisions we made were the segments. That helps push me forward. When I can't think of anything, I just go back to the basics.
Okay.
And doing it during having the anniversary during Black History Month. Those intentional decisions help spur things when I don't feel like it. And I don't feel like it a lot sometimes. And that's just real. And it's hard because you get a lot of shit for doing stuff like this. I mean, people vary in their critique from, oh, she thinks she all that, to, oh, you're not doing anything important. Oh, you're not doing it like such and such is doing it,
Yeah.
And I don't want to do like such and such is doing it because that's not what I want to do. And the show has become this beautiful, safe space. So like the other part that spurs me on to growth is I know once I get into the studio, I know once we also do some episodes virtually, like totally virtual. We'll do them from like coffee shops now. We'll do them in different community locations. But I know when we get in that space of the show, and I used to think, oh, it's the magic of the studio, but it's really what we've created with the show. My husband, Gibby, Brianna, what we have created with the show is a safe space for even people I don't like to come on, okay. quite honestly, and to share the work that they're doing and to be in this celebratory space of what's happening with them. And also for us to critique these stories that are happening around us. And it just becomes a really warm place. And it's a warm, inviting, everyone who comes is like, oh my gosh, we felt like we were royalty tonight. Yeah. And I love that feeling. I love when people say that. We had our first show back this year was a Valentine's. It was usually the first show back is our anniversary episode.
Okay.
But our first show back this year was our Valentine's Day episode. It was a very special moment.
Okay.
We had 3 couples of color come on the show and talk about their journeys. And that was the first time I've ever done that. And it was so encouraging. It was beautiful. And that was a real moment of growth, I think, for the show, because there were tears. Everyone was talking about this particular episode, because I don't think we'd ever gotten a chance to showcase Black and brown love like that. It was so beautiful. Yeah. And even people I've known for a while now, like Marquise and his wife, they were 2 of our guests on the show for the Valentine's Day episode. And just hearing their journey was so beautiful. And like, everybody's journey has ups and downs, but it was gorgeous. It was such a nice night. And just like that feeling in that night, even though we've had that feeling a million times, it feels so new and so fresh every show that we do. People leave on a high. They leave feeling great. And that is something that I think spurs me on to growth. The audiences are so up and down. It's a Wednesday night, so getting people to come out, I try to push the show up earlier. We started with an 8:30 time, so now we're up to 7, and that's great. And one of the other points of growth that I intentionally did was I went to go see, it's a late night style talk show. So I went to visit various talk shows in New York City, and I want to do an LA run too, to see how they did it. Like, what do they have? How are they making it work? Yeah. And like, these are really famous shows, of course, and got interesting feedback from, you could never have that in Harrisburg. I was like, watch me. That's always my.
That's always your answer.
Watch me do it. So I went to the Daily Show with Trevor Noah. Great experience.
Oh man, that's so cool.
And found out just before I went, the week before I went, he had announced he was leaving.
Okay.
And so that was a really special trip. I went to The View as well, and that's a daytime show, but Whoopi's one of my favorites. I tried to go see Black and Brown folks. Yeah. Whoopi, that show is probably the most well-organized show out of the ones. Everybody was tightly organized, but just the way they did The View was just so inspirational. And it was, you could tell they had some heated moments that I loved because of some of the guests. I think Elizabeth Hasselbeck was on that, and she gave everybody one of her books, and it very much was very interesting to hear that one of the topics they talked about was abortion, and it was palpable in that room.
Okay.
You could feel the crowd embodying what was happening on stage in a very real, very tangible way. And I loved that. I loved being there for that. And Whoopi was so gracious to everyone. She was very, very awesome in person. I also went to the Seth Meyers show. I went to the late show with Jimmy Fallon. Went to just one more. The only person I didn't get to see, which I regret, Colbert. The only person I didn't get to see, I did see Colbert. I didn't get to see Amber Ruffin before her show went off the air. That was sad for me because that's who I really wanted to see.
Right.
But they had stopped doing her episodes by then. They were doing them for a while, and we were like, oh my God, we didn't know Amber had a show. And then just the nasty shit she was getting on like IMBD and all these different places, was just you can always, if you're paying attention, you can always tell when some of these shows are about to tank because
what kind of nasty, when you say she was getting nasty shit, like what do you
so
mean?
Like, all right, Amber did a lot of like one of my favorite segments that she did was How Did We Get Here? And she would do things like Lake Lanier that's underwater, and then talk about all the lakes in the United States that were black underwater cities. How that came to be. And people would just get on our show and said, you know, if she would just focus on the present and look at her, she's a TV show host. Right. It's always, it's so funny. I just made a reel on Facebook and I said, you know, got my PhD only for white men, and I put WM to abbreviate so that Facebook wouldn't ding me. Only for white men to ask me if my PhD came out of a Cracker Jack box, which is a real thing.
That's a real thing.
Oh, it's a real thing, and that is when they disagree with you, especially on you can't possibly be an expert on race because what do you know? and America's not like that for me, the white guy. And and the reason why I bring that up is because it's how I see black women who dare have a voice on anything get treated.
And
it is, Amber Ruffin was a perfect example because she didn't mince no words. She's a writer. She's a prolific writer. And she hosted that show from a very authentic place that didn't sugarcoat anything. And didn't mince words, particularly with how white America treats black and brown people and treats BIPOC people. She just didn't mince words around that. And I was like, this show's not long for this world. No matter how progressive America thinks they are, they ain't this progressive. And that was a very progressive show. Extremely progressive. That's the most, it was on Peacock only. It was only on streaming. And I want to go back and watch episodes because it was poignant. And her and her sister had a book, and they were really moving into this space. And then since then, I still follow her, but her profile is visibly different than before. And while it scares me because that happens to black women so often, especially in spaces of media, it's also really inspiring because she did that. I think Amber Ruffin and women like black women in particular, like Amber Ruffin, know the risks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They know.
They know that they've got a certain window.
You got a little bit of time to do this.
To do as much as they can.
Before they come for your motherfucking neck.
Yeah.
They're coming for you.
Yeah.
And doing that work, knowing that, is why I'm doing the work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And why I am trying to hold on as long as I can.
Yeah.
Because it's not easy. And not only is it not easy, it feels like you have to, and you do, you have to find a way to regenerate pieces of your soul because people will rip it out. They don't give a shit. But if we don't keep filling these spaces, it's going to get filled by something else.
Yeah.
And that's just, and I'm one drop, a small drop in a big bucket of podcasts and shows and the shit that people are getting 80 million views on.
Yeah.
I don't remember Fit and Fresh. Remember them boys? Fit and Fresh?
No, I don't remember Fit and Fresh.
Well, honey.
I might know if I see him, I might recognize him, but not by name.
A black guy and a dark-skinned Middle Eastern guy who was a government agent of some sort. They had probably a $5 million a year enterprise on YouTube. And the way that they catered to racism and grossness was unbelievable. These are black and brown people.
Yeah.
And that's what sells. So imagine trying to be Amber Ruffin You know,
Yeah, in the midst of all that, trying to compete with all that.
it's
That's one of the things that for me is disheartening, because it's easy to kind of get, like when you've got a vision, and it's easy to see the other avenues where you can go and take the clickbait route and do the trendy shit and succeed, as opposed to being like, but I have a vision and it's going to be difficult, but it's purposeful. This is meaningful. There's an information here that I believe needs to be shared, and it's not popular. And it's almost like, where do those people go to see the success that they deserve? You know what I mean? Because
I know.
it's a fine line too, where it's just like, I'm doing this because I love doing it and I'm passionate about it, but at the same time, I'm trying to build something here.
Absolutely.
And when you're going around, like you said, you're visiting these different shows, not only to see how, but just to appreciate what they're doing, like the information and the show that they're giving you, and then also checking out, like, how are they doing that? That is inspiring. And then to just turn around and see a couple schmucks that are just throwing it together, you know what I mean? And it's,
Yes, I do.
There's times where I get ahead of myself. And I'm going through this right now, and I'm doing a little rebranding during the off season. But I for the past 3 years on this podcast, I've been trying to put 2 pounds of shit in a 1 pound box.
Big facts.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And it's just like, there's times where I'm just like, slow down, hold on a minute. Like, I got a vision, I'm sticking to it, but sometimes it's almost like, let me just stop trying to do so much, because I'm watching everybody else not do nearly half as much. You know what I mean? And it's like, what are we watching? What are we like? So I can appreciate that, because it's very easy to either be like, the hell with this, I'm not doing it anymore, or let me switch it up.
Yeah.
To get the views, to get the sponsors, because that's the other game. And it's almost like, don't lose focus on why you started doing this. So I can appreciate, like when I'm hearing your story, it to me, it seems that it's very, very, you're very passionate about it. It's very important.
Extremely.
Not so, not to just give the information, but how can we create an experience? Like you said, people are coming and they're feeling like they are the people are there to see them. They're treated like, that's an experience that you want people to have, because
Absolutely.
then they leave and the word gets out. People want to come back, and I understand that. So, but where exactly does you became a doctor, forgive me, when?
In 2014, August.
Okay, so
10 years a doctor this year. I was like
10 years. The media part, what you're doing now, that wasn't always. I know we talked about, like, being the activist wasn't really always there in the show, but
pre-2020,
none of this.
my life does not even look like this. I was in healthcare.
Yeah.
In revenue cycle.
But I think what I'm trying to get at, though, is it's just like, it's so, again, I understand that it started at the pivot of the pandemic, but it's just so dope to see what you're doing in it, and it just be like, I'm going with the vibe.
Literally going with the vibe.
Yeah.
Yeah. I quit my full-time job in April 2022, and that's because Juneteenth started to explode. So YPOC's like hallmark program now is Juneteenth HBG. And we have a week long of events, and we have a concert and a conference, and we do like big shit. Like, we do it big. It's the biggest that they've seen in that region ever. And it was in April 2022, I went from like being a consultant to then getting my first really big grant from the state for Juneteenth. That was what happened. And I knew that we were onto something, because us and 7 different, was it 7 that year? 7 different entities from across the state had gotten this grant. And it was amazing because I literally went from like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my life to seeing a light at the end of the tunnel with getting this grant and having one of the 2022 was probably one of the, every year's great, but 2022 was the first year we really broke out with Juneteenth HBG. And it was all on the backs of 2020. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like everything changed in 2020.
Yeah.
And I would have pre-2020, nobody was talking about Juneteenth. It wasn't, we were talking about it. We had a Juneteenth thing every year before. Yeah. And then 2020, we had this huge backyard party for Juneteenth at Thurston Manor, which is the YPOC house. Owned by myself and my husband. We bought a house in Harrisburg to have a community space.
Oh, that's dope.
And we had news coverage and we had all this stuff. And that year, several members and friends of mine who were in state government started to revive their push for Juneteenth as a state holiday. The next year, Governor Wolf made it a state holiday. The year after that, President Biden made it a federal holiday. And ever since then, again, we were just in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Doing the things. We were, as a friend of mine says, you don't need anyone's permission. You have to do your work. That's Julia Mallory. And that's what we were doing. We were doing our work. We were working. We had been working in the community. So when this moment came, we were already ready.
Yeah.
And it was, it's always scary every year now. Some of the parts I hate about this work is raising money, asking white people for money. It's very fucking annoying. Yeah. Their favorite thing to say now, as I like to say, the 2020 effect is wearing off. Well, what are you doing besides Juneteenth? All of my sponsors are going to hear that, but I don't care though. If you're not going to give me the money, you're not going to give me the money. And I'm always like, what do y'all think we do? We have to build leaders to lead this effort. We have to train people. We have to build leadership skills into this. Stop asking us what we're doing besides Juneteenth.
Yeah.
What are you doing besides? We meet every week. We do community engagement events. We build programming around it, plus our happy hours, plus our leadership skills and all these skills workshops and all the things we're doing. But we take emancipation seriously. One, because Pennsylvania was the first state in the recognized union to have emancipation, 1780. They had partial abolition. The last slaves weren't freed in Pennsylvania until much later, but they were the first state, and states like New York and New Jersey and other states followed Pennsylvania's model of partial abolition.
I did not know that.
Nobody does. And it's crazy because we live here.
Yeah.
Like, we live in the state of Pennsylvania, and people don't know this. And so I've become a lay scholar, and I say lay scholar because I know the work it takes. I met a young man named Corey Young who did his dissertation on this work, and as a doctor of books, we are both PhDs. I don't like to say that I'm an expert in anything because I know what it takes. So I've become a lay scholar in Juneteenth and abolition and emancipation work. And it is fascinating how distant, in my mind, disconnected Pennsylvania is from the abolition landscape, even though it's literally the first state in the nation to have any kind of abolition.
That's ironic.
Very much so.
Yeah.
So I've been, I've taken it up as my mantle to talk about it because it's connected to everything that I do, especially this, the work we do with YPOC with making sure that we create community. Creating community depends on economic livelihood. It depends on being able to purchase a home. It depends on being able to thrive where you live. It depends on how you can create social community versus a professional community. And it depends on all these things. And a lot of that stems from, especially in Harrisburg, from how abolition was carried out in the region. And so we've really been working with that effort to, educate folks, but also give an aspect of celebration, because folks just think when you talk about abolition, we talk about Juneteenth, we talk about these things, that it's just got to be like a mournful, sad time. It's got to be real serious.
Right.
And nobody should have any fun. And I disagree. I think you can educate while people are, celebrating freedom and really for real celebrating it and recognizing that it was 85 years from 1780 to 1865 until the last slave was freed in Galveston. That's a long time.
Yeah.
That's a long time. And we're talking, and the other work I'm doing is tracing that. I want to trace that nationally. Oh, that's a long project. But think about 2 generations and almost 2.5 generations of people talking about abolition, that means when the first time somebody said a slave is free to the last time, these people died and gone on. Grandkids, some of their kids that would still see slavery. And here we are trying to figure out why Black and brown communities are in the shape they're in now without acknowledging this history.
Yeah.
Without acknowledging, what was happening in Harrisburg at the time. I just did a presentation at the Presbyterian Church, Market Square Presbyterian, on abolition and the Presbyterian Church in Central PA. And we discovered together some real interesting tensions that were happening in the early 1800s around abolition after Pennsylvania had passed the Partial Abolition Act in 1780. And so there's so much rich history here in this region too, Lancaster, York, all over this central Pennsylvania region. South Central PA has so much rich history that we just don't know. And uncovering it is hard. One, because, there were a lot of records that were destroyed. Two, because nobody talked about it. So once they raised the 8th Ward, which was a majority Black community, to build the Capitol, the people have been fighting to keep that history alive. And I joined those efforts. To make sure that people know. I forget what question you asked me, but
No. I'm taking it.
You know what I mean? Like, and
I
to
can't
me,
remember either. I'm just.
And to me, yeah, all this goes together. I'm telling you, from 2020, and for all of us, I just did a spot on the show last night. We had an all virtual, just me and my husband last night doing the show, because I wanted to take some time to really get into local politics, and I did. I got a lot of text messages after that, like, so you was talking about the candidates? Yes, I was. Yes, I was. But I took some time to also this week. Will mark 4 years on the 16th that Pennsylvania shut down.
Yeah. I was thinking about that the other day, that we're coming up on 4 years. And I'm like,
4 years.
What?
And how much everything has changed in 4 years.
Yeah. And how much everything has changed, and how some of it, I feel like we kind of like reverted back to like it never happened. I wish.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things that I during that time was, whether it was genuine or not, I'll never really know, but there just seemed to be a sense of like, even though there was it was a cause to pause and be like, what's going on? There's a concern here. We could see like people just praying, staying together. We were spending more time with family.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's why I brought that up earlier, because it was just kind of like, wow, this is actually good. We needed this. What are we going to do now? Well, we can't go to work, so let's well, we could drive, but let's go drive and see family. Let's hang out. The reason I bring that up is because now it's just kind of like we've kind of like gone back to the old way of just like, well, not seeing each other as much, and I wish that that moment when we were all kind of like huddled in our homes, not knowing what was going on, that we didn't have that fear now, but we had that sense of not security, but I can't think of the word, like stability, or like my kids were home. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like when my kids were home, we were here. I knew. We're good. Mm-hmm. And
you had a stable unit.
We had, okay, yeah, you know what I mean? And it's just like, now it's just kind of like, I don't know if that was supposed to be like during that time when you say like things happen for a reason. I do believe that as well. And I'm like, is that part of that time? Were we supposed to learn that? Like, like, don't take your family for granted. Don't call your family more. Call your mom more. I lost family because of COVID. Mm-hmm. And at that time, we had no idea. We couldn't even go. We went to the burial, but we weren't allowed to be in the. We had to stay back. That whole experience of like not being able to say goodbye the right way.
It's traumatizing.
Yeah,
and it's awful. We have our traditions. We've made our various traditions across cultures for a reason, because it helps us process. And disrupting that was really hard. It was really hard. And I don't know, one of our dear friends died right before the shutdown. And God rest Miss Vera Cornish. And she was, they say she didn't die of COVID, or at least publicly, we don't know. We don't know what happened. But they found her home in her home, and going to her funeral was a whole thing. She died a day before my mom's birthday, and they had her ceremony a few weeks later, and that was the start of the wave. And then seeing the coroners taking bodies out of homes, and that was happening in the city, and our city and the county were not counting these deaths. They weren't really reporting them at high numbers. They weren't doing testing. I remember our police chief, one of the reasons I don't like him is because he got on the city television and said that he heard a warm bath cured COVID.
See, it's that dumb shit. Where I'm
that
like,
stupid ass shit.
Why do you say that, man?
It was dumb as fuck. And like, I don't like to call people dumb, but that shit was idiotic. It was fucking stupid.
Wait, where did he hear that? And why would you?
That's what he said. And he kind of said he heard it. That he just kind of did that. And it was so, and it was so ridiculous to me because they weren't doing the things that we knew were working in other localities to make sure that people were safe in a lot of ways. Like testing worked. Testing helped people isolate, and there were certain entities that were not promoting that. There were a lot of entities that were not promoting that, actually. People were fighting over developing tests. Like they didn't want to use this test because they want their own tests and this nonsense, fighting the labs, the hospital systems were fighting the labs because they didn't want to use somebody's test. They wanted to develop their own. All the while, people are literally dropping like fucking flies because we can't contact trace.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like these things are happening. We didn't have a county health department. So when the health systems aren't cooperating and you don't have a county health department to do this work, because Dauphin County doesn't have one, nothing gets done. Nothing gets done. And you don't have a defense, and you have to do your own. I worked at a community health center, and we did contact tracing because that's the only way we could figure out how to, at least alert people to the fact that they could be exposed, and people, God rest Mr. Gerald's soul, Lisa, some of the huge community giants who passed away from COVID during that time, people who got really sick because there wasn't enough education. Folks thought, well, if I just do one-on-one, I won't get it because at least I'm not in a crowd. Folks who were providing, personal services, barbering, hair salon services, makeup, different things at homes, getting sick and not, the education just wasn't where it needed to be.
Yeah.
And I always say I regret, but like, heck, we were out there trying. I regret having the leaders, but that's, you can do about that.
Sometimes that's what it does take, though, is like you said, lead the leaders. But I do remember, I remember every day it was like another day of statistical information on the TV and what the new updates, and it was almost like the angst and stress levels that, and we were home. My wife is a nurse. She's a manager now for home care health, but she at one point was out in the field, and I was grateful, and I felt guilty for feeling, but I'm just glad that you're not out in the field right now. But even she was just like filling me in on what she was dealing with on her end.
Oh yeah.
And it was just like you said, even though it was in different contexts when you mentioned the small drop in the water, was there's so much more going on outside of what we're experiencing.
Absolutely.
That even though I didn't have all the information and I didn't know what was what, I just knew I didn't know what was what, and I just felt, let's just do what we need to do. Let's just stay safe. Don't fuck around and act stupid. I get you're upset. I get it. You know what I mean? Like,
but freedoms, we got it. We got it.
Yeah,
people are literally dropping like fries around you, but fine, your freedoms.
Right.
I don't know.
And I worked at FedEx at the time. I was a dock worker, and we were considered essential, and so it was. It was like, just if you get pulled over, just show them your ID from work, and I'm like, what is going on?
What is happening?
Like, if I get pulled over.
Yep. We had to have decals from work. They had to give us little things to put in the windows to show the cops. I was like, Jesus.
Yeah. I can appreciate that, and listening to like your story along with others in the podcast. Like I said, it always kind of comes back to the pandemic the protests, that time period, a lot of people's journey and story kind of pivots there.
Yeah.
And so I'm always just really intrigued and appreciative of that. What do you do because you got a lot going on. You got a lot going on. What are you doing to kind of keep yourself level-headed and to keep everything that's working in your mind, to keep it?
If I tell you, you might have to delete it. But I absolutely hang out with my dogs. They're hilarious.
Yeah.
We argue all day. It's pretty funny.
What kind of dogs you got?
I have 2 little badass mutts. They're so cute, though. They're so cute. I mean, most dogs are very adorable. But those are my babies. We hang out all the time. And they keep me from being, because I work from home now. So I do I do a lot of consulting and stuff. So they keep me sane. My husband makes me walk. I hang out with my husband. He's a great person.
What's your husband's name?
Basier.
Basier?
Yes, Basier is such a level-headed. So we share a very strong value base, value foundation, which, is interesting because every time we pull out our value circles every year for our anniversary, we're like, oh, we're still doing the things.
There you go.
Our 8th anniversary was in February. So we talk a lot. We've always had great conversation. We've always been able to talk through like current events and like what's stressing us out and all these different things. And it's been invaluable. We were talking last night about how we made it through the pandemic.
Yeah.
A lot of couples did not. A lot of friends we know did not make it. And as the dominoes begin to fall in a lot of our friendship circles, especially with the couples, we clung tighter to each other. Mm-hmm. And I think that has been our saving grace, my saving grace. I also process differently. I think the show has forced me to process the news differently because I was internalizing a lot of the news up until up until the show, because January 2021 was when the insurrection happened. And I remember being affected so heavily by the insurrection, even though I wasn't there. I wasn't there. But, the crazy ladies from Pennsylvania right there in Camp Hill, who stole Nancy Pelosi's laptop, and that's not far from where I live,
Right.
And seeing how many people, I think Pennsylvania's only second to Texas, with how many people have been charged and convicted of insurrection crimes. So it has been interesting learning to reprocess, because I had gained a lot of weight during the pandemic. The job was stressful and I needed different ways to process. I was angry all the time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I think the show has really been a respite. I had started doing, shout out to Claudia Kenyon at Capital Punishment Boxing Gym.
Okay.
Started doing boot camp in the mornings. I got to go back. I'll be back, Claudia, I promise.
See, now it's on here. Now
right?
you got to
go. I gotta go. Yeah. He was a saving grace, getting up and, even during the pandemic, because I had started going right before the pandemic and then started, trying to, get healthy. And for a while he couldn't have class, so trying to do stuff at home, but knowing there's a community there, and making the walks. The walks help. Sometimes when I don't want to get outside, having to take the dogs out. The dogs love to walk. They'll nudge me to get outside, even if they don't have to pee or anything. They'll I don't know. They're just they can sense when I'm not moving enough.
Gotcha.
And they'll nudge me until I get up. It's very funny because Huey's very insistent. Huey and Langston, and my activist dogs, and their names very much describe them. Langston literally never shuts up, and Huey likes to fight. So, so it's been a journey with also relearning how to use Facebook, because I was getting in fights all the time on Facebook, trying to defend this and do that, and I don't do that anymore. I'm block, whatever, next. But I think all those things but especially learning how to reprocess, because I was just not, I had a great therapist. She's excellent. Who really has been working with me on, taking care of my inner child, which is something that I thought was really silly before I started doing it. And she would ask me questions like, well, why do you jump right to internalizing things? Why do you do certain things? And I'm like, I don't know. She's like, well, let's work on it. Well, tell me. And we started discovering, people who within like an overdrive for justice usually feel like some kind of injustice has been committed, onto them. And they are trying to avenge things in a way, hoping that it will avenge what they're feeling. And so, walking through a lot of the situations that we brought up in therapy really helped me see that I could try and avenge certain situations in a different way. I didn't have to, take it out on some random internet person, or even if they're offensive. And in the long run, you may never see that person, but your own mental health is affected adversely. And do you want to live like that? That's the question it has to come down. Do you want your health to be affected? Especially as a Black woman, you're already under all these other stressors.
Right.
Do you want to add that extra stress? How can you take stress off? Because you want to be able to be well enough to do whatever you got to do, right? And she would constantly remind me of what I said was important and, do these exercises. And it's been a journey, but it's been an important journey, and it's been a journey that I think I would have never have gone on if I didn't have friends also who were like, you probably want to go to therapy. Oh, were you going to therapy? You probably want to start back. My old therapist who doesn't practice anymore, her going, you need to find a therapist. Yeah. So therapy, and some more therapy. And also I play the piano.
That's cool.
I sing. I bought a piano during the pandemic. I bought a electric Yamaha, which has been a great thing. I need to get back to playing it more. I played more during the pandemic. And trying to like operate in my giftings, whatever's rising to the top at the moment, learning new things, like learning how to do a show. And really trying to like staying inside also helped me realize how much I like staying inside, because I didn't think I knew I liked it before, because I'm such an extrovert.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Or at least I thought I was that much of an extrovert. And so now I love my house a lot more. I changed the back room into an office/workout studio. That's got like big mirrors and it already had big mirrors and a walk-in closet. So now I have like a yoga mat in there and weights and stuff. So I can go in and do a couple quick whatevers. Things are just set up in a way, I think, that really make it easier for me to like not run outside for some kind of fulfillment, which is my normal. Like, what event can I go to? I'm feeling kind of down. I'm gonna go outside.
I got you.
Because that's my go-to. So now learning to balance that is difficult though, because like I have an on-off switch for most things. And so, learning to balance my schedule, there are so many of us, when you branch out on your own, like I did in 2022, now it's like you got to balance your schedule, because you could be outside in the street all day and all night doing every single event. There's always something going on. There's never not something. I've never understood people come here and they go, there's nothing to do. I was like, I have found something to do every day of my life. Yeah. So that has been a balancing act. But, really those things I mentioned have helped me maintain balance. And it's not a perfect road. Sometimes I'm horrible at it. Like the last couple of months I've been in a kind of funky place, I think, just because, I don't know, I go through these periods every couple of years where I'm like, what's next? And I'm trying not to let that, I really wanted to spend another year. So the show's in season 4, and I wanted to do 5 seasons and have a body of work and like analyze it before I like moved on to something else.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know if the 5 number is the number, but I wanted to have at least 5 seasons of seeing what it is and then deciding, hey, do I want to keep doing a show? Or do I want to try something different? And really give myself the room to grow, I think. Because it's easy. I think the easier thing is to just move on and try something new. So that's been an interesting journey.
Yeah, I can appreciate that, because that's kind of where I'm at right now. Where I'm kind of like, I'm actually like, man, I think I want to try something new because I think I've succeeded what I wanted to do, and I feel like I'm plateauing. So I can appreciate that. But you know, I appreciate you being vulnerable also, and sharing the therapy and the transparency in that, which I think people appreciate, which is pretty much the gist of the podcast. It's just like, you know, let's talk about these type of things, because I think everybody goes through that, where it's just like, you know, I need to go on more walks. My wife usually does the walks, and I always tell myself I'm gonna go on more walks, but I can always find a reason why I don't want to go on.
Oh, absolutely.
I always get caught up in something else, or I'm too busy. And now we got a dog ourselves, so now it's just like we gotta take this dog out for a walk.
This guy's gotta go outside. Yeah, you gotta go outside.
He's angsty.
Winter or not, you gotta go outside. And I love the studio. It's really, I'm gonna take a good video of it.
Thank you. This is, I tear it all down and put the family room back. You know, and I gotta do that every week. So I know you understand when it comes to that, because there's some things where I'm like, I don't know if people understand what the hell I'm doing here, and I'm doing it all on my own. Sometimes it's just like, there's times where somebody cancels and I'm like, cool, you know,
you're like, thank God.
Like, it used to bother me at first, and now I'm just at the point where I just roll with it. Like, all right, it is what it is. Like, I probably need that damn break because I'm running myself ragged. So, and then when I hear you telling your story, I'm like, yeah, I relate to a lot of it. That's why I asked, like, what do you do? Because it's really easy, and I never had this until I started the podcast, where I never had this push. This, once you know you have something and you're like, I want to do this and I want to do that. I have these ideas. I have this vision. I want to do it right because it means something. You just go and you go and you go, and then the next thing you know, it's just like, it's been like 8 months straight of nothing but like, go to work, come home, do this, and it's like, you're gonna run yourself ragged.
Yes, you are.
Sometimes you got to take those breaks. So you kind of alluded to this in a way already, but I mean, I'd like to kind of like push a little more on it. Like, you where, when you're traveling, visiting these different shows and getting you're filling your cup and you're learning what they're doing and appreciating what they're doing, what's the game plan for you when it comes to?
Oh, I don't know.
You don't have a game.
No, not really.
You're just doing it day by day. I mean, there's got to be something though. You kind of.
I don't even want to pretend.
That's the greatest answer to that question I've gotten.
Like, we won an award in season 2 to 3. I applied for the Anthem Awards, or like social justice based work awards, because I thought it was perfect for the show, and we won 2 of them.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And after that, I was like, do I want to get on the awards hamster wheel? Maybe not. But because it's expensive, they don't give you awards unless somebody nominates you and pays for it. You gotta apply, you gotta showcase your work.
I had no idea about that.
Nobody knows this.
Wow.
And so, like, I did a little bit of that. And you get a taste for it. You're like, oh, they had like, it was really nice. They had like a little awards party, and they showcase your work on their website and all this stuff. But I think some folks also felt a little bit like it was a money grab, because it's expensive, like to apply for these awards. And all these awards are like that. From the Oscars, come on down. They are all expensive to apply for. They're very expensive. And so, you know, these to get your work recognized, you had to already have money. And so when you have a show that doesn't have money, you have to, I don't know, I changed gears. That was just a very eye-opening experience. There's the tellies, and there's the anthems, and there's all these different ones that, you know, the Webbies. The Webbies are actually pretty cool. The Webbies and the Anthem are, the Webbies are a parent company of the Anthem Awards. You should submit your work. I think I've just one to get an award. But it also, the good thing about that is you meet so many other creators who are doing amazing work. I met women from the Dominican Republic that are talking about women's issues. I met people from Brooklyn and California, and a different, all over the place, who are doing some really cool work.
You're from Brooklyn, right?
I'm from Brooklyn. Yeah, I was born and raised, born and partially raised in Brooklyn and then in Florida. I always say I've lived in Florida by way of Brooklyn, and my heritage is Trinidad.
Okay.
And Trinidad and Tobago. But yeah, like the plan shifts, because like where I want to go, I'm always like, I am going to be an internationally renowned talk show host who gets to interview all of the amazing like social justice warriors. You know, that's become a bad word, but they're warriors to me around the globe. That's what I really want to do.
Gotcha.
How do I get between here and now? I have no idea. Like, you know, I'm doing the ones in my city. I've done some regional ones. We have people come from as far as Maryland and New York City and Jersey and all over the East or Northeast coast to be on the show. So it's been awesome. And people are like, well, you need to start doing this and you need to start doing that. You need to start getting more high profile guests. If you want one, you need to get more views and you need to do this. And I'm like, I got it. I get that's the thing everybody's on.
Yeah.
But I really want to showcase local folks, number one. And number two, I really want to patronize the theater. Open Stage has been amazing to us. I love having the show there. People are like, well, you're never gonna have a big show in Harrisburg. I'm like, you know what? We're gonna make it pop somehow.
Yeah.
So those are the constraints you're working with, because one, there's this really weird kind of like cloud over Harrisburg where people are always like, oh, if something good happens, like, oh, it feels like I'm in New York City. Feels like I'm in DC. Feels like I'm somewhere else. They don't ever believe good things happen in Harrisburg. That's why I'm so stringent about everything I'm doing being in the city. I'm like, we're doing Juneteenth, lock it to the city limits. Let's show people that we have the facilities, we have the businesses, the organizations that can really make this thing a thing.
Yeah.
So that has been my, you know, the last almost decade, because we're coming up on, you know, we're already a quarter through 2024, but, you know, we really have been working towards like building up not just the tourism attraction, and we work with the Department of Tourism, the county, and all these different, you know, entities, and the economic development folks, like all kinds of stuff. Not only are we working with that, but we also we've also kind of been like, for me, the future of YPOC and the future of the show are intertwined, because the show is a partnership between Open Stage and YPOC. And so like whatever the future of those entities are, we want to be in that. We want to be in that way. And I want to be an internationally renowned talk show host, but I also want to be, you know, keep being a community change agent, keep being a person who sees the value of the locality where you live and making a difference there. I want to keep being that person. Yeah. And so it's hard, because it seems like for a lot of people, the only way that you are gauged to be successful is if you rise to national prominence and like move to LA to go be on TV. And I'm like, I really want to do this here. Can I build a TV studio here where we have a place where people can come and do their shows? Like, have my ultimate dream, if I'm talking future, because I've been toying around this idea, and I'm going to say it into this podcast, because I haven't said it publicly before. I've been working behind the scenes trying to see how I can make it work. But I want to have a regional multi-use facility based in Harrisburg that houses podcasts, conferences, TV shows like mine, you know, and have it so that people who don't have money are trying to make it, have a professional place with equipment to do their work. And there are a couple of us that share this idea, because we know that there are so many more voices. To me, the more voices, the better. Like, people are like, oh, well, aren't you in competition with blank? No. Everyone fills a specific, very specific place and very specific role. And also they cross over. Like, it's specific because we're all unique people, but it's also very much should be in tandem with each other, in my opinion. And I want to, if I'm thinking dream, I'm thinking a place where YPOC and Black NewsBeat can coexist. We can have our conference every year. We can have a concert. We can have the show there. We can have my husband had started the Harrisburg Podcast Network a few years back, trying to bring together and help people have a good place to house their podcast. Different ones have popped up since then, but also create a Harrisburg Podcast Network so all the podcasters could talk, right? So they could all learn things from each other, because there's learning in all of that. That I don't think we get to do enough of. One, because a lot of the spaces where we want to do it are cut off. We can't get into them. And if we can get into them, they cost a lot of money. So that also cuts off a good number of people. Or if you can get into them and you find the money, you can't replicate it because it's very expensive. And so, there are some places that charge you a ton of money. There was a building we were looking at. It was on sale for crap ton of money, and we were like, this is Harrisburg, who is buying you know what I mean, like, what are you doing with it? And it's still sitting empty to this very day because the person, I think they took it off the market and probably gonna put it back on. They're rich. That building could sit there for the next 10 years and it won't fucking matter to them, you know what I mean, until the courthouse, I think the courthouse is functioning now, and property values this, and that's what people who can afford to let a piece of property sit there and do, that's what they do. And so I ain't got that kind of time or money.
Right.
So that's the dream, is to have a multi-use, multimedia center where we can house the nonprofits. And I used to think this was based on color, but it's really anybody who is a lot of our nonprofits, not the rich ones, but the nonprofits who don't have endowments and all this stuff and are trying to make a community difference. I've talked with so many nonprofits now who are like, yeah, we would love a space like that. So, wish us luck. We want to find a place. I had thought I had found a place, but then it fell through, and it's going to happen one day. Like that's my big goal that I've been trying to put pen to paper on, because I really feel like whatever the future holds, it has to benefit the community, whatever it is. And that space has to be a space that serves people and loves people into their next best self. And not be so pricey and price people out of things that it's impractical. There are so many spaces in Harrisburg where people are priced out of participating and doing something. I would love for us to go back to that period after the Cold War where we were like, arts in this country. We're not there anymore. And it's a hard thing, because there are people really do flourish and have a more colorful and textured life with so much more depth and breadth when we're able to really hone our self-expression. This just happens to be mine, but that's important. And I think whatever comes next, that is the dream. However I get there, if that spurs me into international talk show host, great. But that, putting a spotlight on the locality where I live is really the end all be all for me. So
I dig it. I think that all stems back to like the just wanting to do for your community one way or another. I've always loved that, because I can relate to I even thought about this. Like, I need to take the podcast into different markets, because I just don't know if it's working for me here. But my heart was like, for Lancaster, I grew up in Lancaster. And so I have the focus on Lancaster because that's where I grew up. And I really wanted to just do it in Lanc. That would be so dope for me to just have that here. And that's what keeps me like doing it, is because I'm like, nah, it's important for me to just stay local. But the dope thing about what you want to do also is having like what your husband's doing with the podcast in Harrisburg. There's so many different people that are good at different things that when you can get people in the room and they don't have to worry about not being able to because the funds aren't there or access to it, they could just come into that room. You can learn from different people. And so that to have a community of different types of well thought out, talented people with sound editing, visuals, that, you see what I'm saying? Like, like what we talked about here, like I'm doing this on my own, but I'm not good at everything. When you have a team and you've got somebody that can take care of this, I'm really good at the lighting. I can help you with your lighting. When we're doing these camera angles, we'll use these lightings. The sound here, the segments that we're working on, you got writers that are good. That all means something to have people to have access. That would be pretty dope, because then the community, when you talk about the arts, that kind of shit, in my opinion, anyway, the community thrives off that.
Agreed.
But it's hard to get people to see that, because not everybody has that mindset, that creative mindset. No. A lot of people don't understand how a creative mindset, how the community benefits from the creative mindset. You see what I'm saying?
I had a friend who, when I started this show, was like, so you're just going to stand up a whole news network by yourself? And I was like, not a whole just a show, but yes, I want to do this. People don't have vision. And it's very, or they have vision for what they want to have a vision for, but you have a vision for something and they're like, oh. And it's interesting, because vision, I think, is collective. And I think each part of the community can share in this collective vision with their own gifting.
Yeah.
Right. And so it doesn't have to be an isolated kind of thing. It doesn't have to be a me or you, me versus you, or only one can survive. So there's a lot of people who like to be the magical, minority, called the magical Negro, a magical minority, where they're the only one doing the thing, and because that is how you get the attention of white people, and that is what people do. If they know. They intrinsically know that if you get the attention of white people, then you're successful. That's their, unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know, but that's what people have been socialized into.
Barometer of success.
Correct.
Yeah.
Been socialized. If somebody notices me who's in the big time, and the big time usually means the white time and the dominant culture time, then I'm successful.
Yeah.
And it's, I think I just, for some reason, my mind slipped on Wendy Williams, and I to tell you the truth, her whole story has always scared me. I've never liked Wendy Williams. I heard her when I was a young kid, when she was still on the radio, tell this 29-year-old black woman with a child that she would have to lower her standards and what she was looking for in a man, because she was old now and she had a kid, and why were her standards so high? Never liked her since then.
Wow.
But she rose to national. She's literally the antithesis of what I want to be. Like, I don't want to be like Wendy Williams. Even though people have reported that she's really nice, but she's used black women as the butt of jokes and built her career off shaming black women, shaming Whitney Houston and all these different figures. And I think of her because I think of the fact that, that is how we've been taught to win. We've been taught to win by stepping on the backs of another person in order to get where we got to go. And yeah, she got nicer. She got older. She did. You can tell she had a little bit of a I don't know, some kind of changes happening. I don't know. But, I don't want to be that. I want to speak truth to power. I want to do those things, but I don't want to, I don't want to use black women as a butt of my jokes. I don't want to, like we were talking about earlier, cater to the basest shit in people. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And so it's just,
I just feel like if it's done right, though, if you can speak truth to power and still find that, get to that level, if I'm making any sense, I believe it can be done. But I understand what you're saying. I just believe that it can be done. I don't know. I know of Wendy Williams. Obviously, I know who she is, but I never knew like the history of Wendy Williams, and my coworker had to break it down for me, because I was like, what's going on now? And I was just like, what? Like, what's the deal? And he had to kind of get me hip to it, and I was just like, I never realized that. So I feel like people can sell their soul, if that's what you want to call it, for success, and I've always believed that if you do what you feel is right and you stay grounded in it, because success comes in different forms.
Absolutely.
I could sit here right now and be like, I want, there's so many things that I want in regards to what I'm trying to do. But at the end of the day, I know that if I do this the right way and I'm happy, if I tell my kids, if you can go to sleep at night, you're doing something right.
Yeah.
If you can't sleep at night, you're doing something ain't right.
Yeah.
So I can appreciate that. I think everything that you've been sharing with me, like one of the vibes that I'm getting to is just like, just wanting to be a good person, but also holding everybody accountable is not a bad thing. I think one of the things that you mentioned that made me think, I can't remember what it was now, but what it made me think was like, we can't discuss the real shit because people get too sensitive about it. People are well, why do we have to keep discussing that? One of the things that I've always appreciated is just like, if it's real and it's authentic, if it's historic, if it's history, then let's talk about it, because we can learn from it. Which is one of the part of the podcast is getting people on here to share, so that we can like learn from each other.
Oh yeah.
Because you're not gonna know if you don't listen. There's a lot of things that I've learned just as a host of the podcast. There's a lot of things that I've learned about myself. And so I hope that people, when they listen to these stories and their journeys, are just like, oh, I didn't really think about that.
Absolutely.
And I've actually had people say that to me, people that I used to work with, like, I never really thought about that. I didn't think I was going to be interested in this particular interview.
Oh, absolutely.
So like, I feel like what you're doing, keep doing it. Like I enjoy watching it pop up live. I keep bringing it up live because like, that's always been like I would like to do that and get to that part, like where I have people watching and sitting, and
absolutely.
I think it enhances, like, what are we doing here? This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
And do you have like any tidbits of some golden nuggets of assistance or thoughts that might be helpful to people who are trying to do what you're doing? They're thinking about it. When you're thinking about when you talk about speaking truth to power, speaking up about things that are very real, but also not when you talk about the window closing, and I obviously I can't speak for a woman or a black woman, but I can understand what you're saying, where it's almost like I have this window I have to operate, and there's another black woman out there that's thinking, what I want to get into this. What are some things you would say to help her out?
Well, first I want to just thank you for even letting me talk about all of this, because I don't think that people aren't interested, but I think that it's hard for people to take notice to something like this. You get a lot more you thought people were going to listen to you. So thank you, first of all, for like really inquiring about the process. That's important to me. And I really love this idea of like the journey, right? Like I love that. And talking about the journey, because we don't reflect enough on that. We just don't reflect enough on, like, this has been a really great learning experience for me, because I'm listening to myself and I'm thinking about, just sitting here for the last hour or so, how I'm processing out what's happened in the last 4 years. And I'm like, wow, look at what's happened in a different way, just sitting talking to you. So thank you. This is important work to me.
Awesome.
And I'm glad you're here in this space. And I'm glad that we get to be colleagues of sorts, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe one day we can do, I'm gonna get to the question, I promise, but I have this idea that we could do a podcast like summit, where we get a whole bunch of people together to kind of talk about our journeys.
Yeah, I'm digging it. Yeah,
that would be really cool. Okay, so I just want to say that. So thank you. I just had that idea. I was sitting here thinking about it while you're talking. So thank you.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I think the first thing, I probably have an 80 million points, so I'm gonna condense it because I know we've been talking for a minute. But the first thing I would say is do it, whatever it is. People are gonna tell you that somebody's already doing something like it. How is it different? Do it anyway. Your voice will shape you. Sometimes you cannot even shape your voice until you start doing it. And it is natural and normal that you will start off sounding like somebody else, right? Because you haven't done it yet. So you don't know what your voice is. You don't know where you want to land yet. You haven't even taken off. So do a little bit of research, find out what you like. and really take whatever road you end up on, take it as a way to get to know yourself. Because one of the things I did appreciate, even though I'm not a Wendy Williams fan, is she absolutely she was not a hypocrite. She said when in a one of the TMZ or something interviews that she's like, well, I expect people to be all of my business right now because I've been in people's business for years, right? And I've talked about so many people, so I expect people to talk about me. And I thought that was very honest, and I respected that because that's the brand she built.
Yeah.
Not the brand I want to build, but I'll be clear.
Gotcha.
But it is the brand she built, and she understood that about her brand and herself. So taking the time to understand yourself and be healthy about it. I don't think the way she ended up understanding herself was healthy, because she drank herself to sleep every night, and her nephew even could attest to these things. And now she's suffering from a really interesting case of dementia because of her drinking and probably some other health issues. And she's got edema and she's really sick. That is not how I think we should go out as Black women, obviously. So taking the time to know yourself, to be healthy, like we were talking about, having those outlets, having a way to process, treating your work as a way to help you process certain things, like bringing your whole self to it so that you're not like, this is something I just do on the side, but bringing your whole self to in a healthy way, not making it make or break. Like I have struggled not to make this make or break for me. Like, oh, if I don't do it, I'm not gonna.
Okay.
Don't do that to yourself either.
Okay.
Because it's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be enjoyable. It's supposed to be something that helps you grow and not something that makes you feel stifled. I wouldn't say stop doing it if that happens, because a lot of people are like, if you don't not having fun doing it, then don't do it. I don't think that's realistic. I think that you have ups and downs.
Yeah.
Like I'm in a funky place right now with a lot of things, but I talked about, I built a structure that I rely on to help me get through times like this.
Okay.
And making sure that you have a support system, no matter what that looks like. Listen, your support system could be, well, as we learned during the pandemic, your support system can be virtual or it can be tangible right with you. During the pandemic and trying to build an online presence, I've made so many people, friends, and a online support system that I never knew could have ever existed pre-pandemic.
Gotcha.
I've had the Black NewsBeat page since 2018. It was named something else, but I've had that same page for years.
Okay.
Maybe 2017. And so it's looks completely different than it did years ago.
Yeah.
And really taking stock that community can come in so many different ways, and being open to it, like being open to the process. Like being open is like really underly just understated. Like we say, oh, be open, but not open like you just wide open accepting anything, but really like open to support, open to restructuring as you need to, open to good ideas, developing a good vetting system for ideas, and not letting your own self-doubt, like sometimes this is a lonely journey, and self-doubt comes in and it's like, can you do this? Are you sure? This is this even interesting?
Are we wasting our time?
Exactly. Are we wasting our time? It's just you, but are we wasting it? Should you get a job? Go back to work, whatever the case may be. And so it's like so difficult to be with yourself sometimes, but it's also an important exercise to be with yourself. Develop a framework around being alone and processing your own thoughts, because sometimes no one will understand the journey you're on.
Yeah.
A lot of times, sometimes my own husband has not understood the journey I'm on. And it's not because he's a bad person.
No, I dig
it's
it.
because it's your journey.
Yeah.
And you have to be on it. And sometimes you're on it solitarily by yourself, and not lonely, but sometimes you got to be in your head for a little bit trying to figure it out, and having a framework on how to approach that is very important. And then lastly, as I say at the end of every show, being kind to yourself, loving on yourself, bigging up yourself when no one is there to do it for you, and clapping for yourself. Sometimes you got to do that. You're not going to get the outside validation that you need all the time. Outside validation is important. People are like, oh, I don't need nobody. Yes, you do. You need people.
Yeah.
But sometimes all you literally have is your own applause for yourself. I remember a friend of mine was like, you know what you should do? You just clap at yourself in the mirror. Clap for yourself in the mirror. Well, I cried every time I did it for about 3 weeks, but clapping for myself in the mirror is a stupid exercise. So I thought when I started. But I really would give myself my own flowers. And I've started doing that more because you have to have an inner source sometimes.
Yeah.
And it runs out. Trust me, we all know. And if we're being honest, and you do need your support system to help build you back up, but you gotta find a little bit to a moderate amount of inner wellspring,
Yeah.
so that you can get through some really tough thinking times. Sometimes you got to think through, what direction you're going in, and sometimes you can't talk about it out loud yet. And how do you get through that, without developing a framework to help you get through it? And your framework could look like whatever you want it to look like. But yes, the only boundaries I put on that is make it healthy.
Yeah.
And make it something that, actually moves you forward.
Yeah.
And then last but definitely not least, really own, I said what I said, and own it.
Okay.
Own what you say, own what you do. Don't let anybody shame you out of saying what you got to say. Even if it sounds really dumb, say it, and don't be afraid to correct yourself. Be like, you know what?
Right.
I did say what I said, and I did say it, but also I've evolved in my thinking.
Right.
And I'm not going to take that back. I want it to be on the record because I said it.
Right.
But here's some more of what I think about what I said, and be self-critical. It's okay to be introspective. It's okay to self-crit, that funny word from a little while ago. It's okay to be, you get more material and more, I think it's something Miles Horton said, who's an old-time adult educator. You make the road by walking. And sometimes walking involves going backwards a couple steps in order to go forward. So, and that sometimes that backwards is looking back over the journey, like we've been doing, and critiquing yourself.
Yeah.
And critiquing your experiences. Not too much on the criticizing, but really doing constructive criticism with yourself. To me, I think that's important. And yeah, those are just some of the things that I think are really important to. You want to, and ain't nothing to starting but just to start. Ain't nothing to it, but you really do have to do it. And don't let nobody talk you out of it, because they're gonna try. People gonna try.
No, I appreciate that. I know giving yourself grace is something I live by, and a big thing, like what you just said now, is when you learn new information, it's okay to change your mind on something. I think as I get older, one of the things that I've been the cool thing that I've been learning is how humility really doesn't feel bad. Like if I'm making sense, to humble yourself and be like, actually I was wrong there, or actually I knew what I meant there, but now that I have this information,
that's right.
I'm going to change that's okay. I try to teach my kids, to own it is the best thing in the world, because there's so much baggage in trying to live up to something and trying to be something and try to have this persona. The best thing you can do is just be yourself. And if it means being I goofed up there. Hey, I said that there. I don't mean that now. And it is what it is.
Yeah.
I learned. And it's just you just go with it.
You do have to go with it.
You have to. But it's freeing. It's when I get older, I learn more. It's just so freeing to just be I know I said that. I know I wrote that. Yes, that's me on the video there. I said that.
I said that.
But if I don't want to hide it, because how are you going to see my growth? And I think today's culture, it's almost like you're condemned for having an opportunity to grow, because you're constantly reminded of what you did and what you said. It's but that's how you grow.
Yeah, and in cancel culture is, I don't think it's as straightforward as people make it. But what I do know is we don't make room for two things. If you mess up, there's not a lot of room for redemption, and there's no room for humility. When people humility is seen as weakness. And I'm thinking of Chris Brown. He is one of the most arrogant motherfuckers I've ever witnessed online. But he also has had no room to show that he's a better person. And I think that makes him look more terrible.
Gotcha.
And that happens to a lot of us. Cancel culture. We're constantly fighting cancel culture, or whatever we think cancel culture is, because I don't really believe in that. Like, if you do some fucked up shit, you pay the consequences for that. But I don't think you need to be, wiped off the face of the earth for, most things. Some things.
Yeah,
maybe.
I dig it. Yeah.
But, we sometimes we take ourselves way too seriously. And that is a hard thing. And then we expect others to take us seriously in a certain way. And when they don't, it's devastating. And instead of kind of operating from a place of, 1, grace, 2, humility, and 3, just like knowing you gotta go with it, right? Like we said, you gotta go with it. You can't let your humility bear you in shame, because that's not what it's for. And you can't let whatever we're calling cancel culture these days, do that. Do the thing where it knocks you so far off your square that you become unrecognizable. Yeah, you know what I mean. And so, I just.
Well, that's why I think like owning it is like it's maintaining who you are so that you aren't unrecognizable. You're not trying to fix it where you undo yourself so much that you're unrecognizable. And if you don't have control over something, just owning up, like, I don't have control over this. I can't. I'm not going to stress about this anymore because I don't have control over it. That was another thing that you mentioned. You didn't say it in those words, but it was.
But absolutely that.
Things changing.
Yeah.
And being able to just be like, all right, it is what it is.
It is what it's changing.
We have plans, but plans don't always stay. They don't always work out the way they're supposed to. And you can also learn. There's something from the change of the plan. There's something coming that you're supposed to benefit from. Absolutely right. So, Dr. Kimeka Campbell, thank you very much for joining me.
It is my pleasure. Thank you for having me. This has been pretty great, pretty awesome.
Cool. Well, that's it for JMC. We're done.